Welcome to 30 Millionaire Stories, where tales that seem small on the surface touch the deepest corners of the heart. This morning, in a quaint little cafe on the outskirts of Denver, sunlight glimmers through dusty window panes, casting a soft glow over a man sitting quietly, his eyes adrift, as if the world beyond these walls doesn't quite belong to him. Across from him sits a young boy, his small hands clutching the edge of the table, silent, unsmiling, like a delicate statue trapped in a cocoon of stillness. This man possesses millions of dollars, yet he stands powerless before the invisible distance separating him from his own son. Can someone who has everything learn to reach the heart of the child he loves most? And what could possibly shatter that unseen barrier? If you believe that love can heal the deepest wounds, hit that like button and subscribe to 30 Millionaire Stories. Every night at 10 p.m. on YouTube, we bring you a story that rekindles faith in humanity. The early morning light filtered through the dusty window panes of the Rusty Spoon, a small cafe tucked away on the outskirts of Denver, where the aroma of toasted bread and freshly roasted coffee mingled, crafting a warm, familiar atmosphere, like a gentle embrace from days long past. The weathered wooden walls, cracked leather chairs, and the soft clinking of spoons against porcelain cups wove a simple, intimate rhythm, like a wordless melody of sincerity. Locals cherished this place, not for its trendiness or grandeur, but because it was a rare corner where the world seemed to slow down, where simple moments were held dear. Yet that morning, a stranger stepped inside, carrying a chill that drew subtle glances from the patrons. Vincent Caldwell, 48, a self-made millionaire with real estate ventures stretching from Denver to New York, sat quietly in a corner booth. His gray suit jacket, neatly folded on the chair beside him, seemed an inseparable part of his persona, sharp, meticulous, and calculated. His demeanor exuded a cool detachment, each movement precise, like a calculated step on a business chessboard. But his eyes, though he tried to conceal it, betrayed a faint unease, as if he carried an invisible burden that money could not lift. Across from him sat Oliver, his 7-year-old son, small and fragile, his pale blue eyes lost in the void beneath the table. His fingers clung tightly to the edge of his chair, as if yearning to shrink away, to escape a world too vast, too overwhelming. Oliver had autism, a complex inner world that Vincent, despite spending thousands on specialists, could not reach. The boy shied from touch, could barely hold eye contact for more than a fleeting second, and had never, not once, embraced his father. Vincent, who had faced corporate giants without flinching, now felt his heart falter before his son's silence, a wall he could not find a way to breach. From behind the counter, Clara Monroe, 29, watched the scene with gentle, unhurried eyes, free of judgment. Her brown hair was loosely tied back, a few strands falling across her face, and her smile carried a natural warmth, like sunlight breaking through a canopy of trees. Clara had once been a preschool teacher, a job she loved until life's twists led her to the Rusty Spoon. Here, she found joy in small things, a nod of thanks from a customer, a smile returned as she refilled a coffee cup. But that morning, her attention was drawn not to the familiar faces, but to the boy with tense shoulders and evasive eyes. She noticed how Oliver flinched when a spoon clattered to the floor, the small, sharp sound cutting through his quiet world like a blade. Without needing an explanation, Clara understood that he was grappling with a reality too loud, too chaotic, where every sound and light could feel like a threat. She stood there, her hands gently wiping the counter, but her mind was with Oliver, his fragility, and the father struggling to mask his own pain. Vincent rarely brought Oliver to places like this. Each outing was a challenge, a journey fraught with the risk of sudden noises and curious stares. But that morning, he had wanted to try, hoping a new setting might spark something in his son. A smile, a glance, anything at all. He sat there, his hands gripping his coffee cup, his gaze shifting between Oliver and the world around them, as if searching for a miracle he wasn't sure existed. Clara, from her place behind the counter, sensed the tension, not just in the boy, but in the father, too. She saw the helplessness veiled beneath Vincent's polished exterior, his longing to connect with his son, and the fear that he might never succeed. In that moment, the space of the rusty spoon seemed to shrink, holding only 3 souls: a boy trapped in his own world, a father powerless before a love he couldn't reach, and a woman whose heart was vast enough to see them both. Vincent Caldwell seldom brought Oliver to public places. Each outing was a journey fraught with tension, a silent battle against the curious stares of strangers and sudden sounds that could shatter his son's fragile sense of calm. Noisy restaurants and crowded streets often left Oliver curled inward, his small hands pressed tightly over his ears, as if the world outside were a storm too fierce to endure. But that morning, at the Rusty Spoon, Vincent held on to a flicker of hope. He wanted to try, just once, to see if a new setting, a simple cafe corner with the scent of toasted bread and the soft clink of stirring spoons, might awaken something in his son. He longed for a sign, a moment when Oliver might lift his head, offer a smile, or simply meet his father's gaze. Yet deep down, Vincent knew this hope was as delicate as the wisps of steam rising from his coffee, curling through the cafe's windows. He was mistaken. A child at a nearby table accidentally knocked over a glass of water, and the sharp crash of shattering glass rang out, piercing the air like a small explosion. Oliver shrank into himself, his tiny body trembling like a leaf caught in a gust. His hands clamped over his ears, his breathing quick and shallow, like a small animal cornered in fear. His pale blue eyes darted frantically, searching for an escape from the whirlwind of sensations overwhelming him. Vincent sat frozen, his chest tightening, a sharp ache spreading from his heart. He wanted to reach out, to pull his son into his arms, to whisper words that could soothe his fear. But he was powerless. The sharp-witted phrases and persuasive arguments he'd used to sway partners in gleaming boardrooms were now meaningless. He murmured, his voice hoarse and strained, "Oliver, it's okay." But the sound only made the boy rock back and forth more fiercely, as if his father's words were yet another noise adding to the chaos. From behind the counter, Clara Monroe watched, her gentle eyes fixed on the boy, unwavering yet soft. She didn't rush forward or intervene as others might have. Her steps were light, almost silent, as she left the counter and approached Oliver. She knelt a few steps away, far enough to respect his private space, yet close enough for him to sense her presence, a presence that demanded nothing, that imposed no expectations. Her palms opened upward, a quiet gesture, an unspoken invitation. She said nothing, only gazed at Oliver with eyes so tender they seemed to whisper that the world could wait, that she would be there until he was ready. For a fleeting moment, Oliver's pale blue eyes met hers, a spark of connection flaring, fragile but real. Then, as if guided by an unseen force, the boy slid from his chair, his small steps tentative as he moved toward her. His arms wrapped around Clara's shoulders, clinging tightly, as if she were the only lifeline in a turbulent sea. Vincent sat motionless, his breath caught in his chest. For 7 years he had never seen Oliver embrace anyone. Not him, not family, not the expensive therapists with walls full of degrees. But now, in this small cafe on the outskirts of Denver, A stranger had achieved what he thought impossible. His heart burned, a tangled mix of admiration and a bitter sting of envy, of newfound hope and the ache of years spent helpless. Clara, still holding Oliver, looked up at Vincent. Her gaze held no pride, no triumph, only a profound understanding, as if she knew this moment belonged not just to Oliver, but to the father grappling with a love he couldn't express. In the warm embrace of the rusty spoon, amid the scent of coffee and the soft clatter of spoons, a miracle unfolded, quiet, unassuming, yet powerful enough to shake the heart of a man who once believed he could control everything. The morning light still lingered on the dusty window panes of the rusty spoon when Vincent Caldwell stepped inside, not drawn by the rich aroma of coffee or the familiar clink of spoons against cups. Today he came for Clara Monroe, the woman who had unwittingly opened a door he thought was forever sealed. He stood before the counter, hands buried deep in his coat pockets, striving to maintain the calm, sharp demeanor of a man accustomed to commanding boardrooms and million-dollar deals. But beneath that polished exterior, his heart was wrestling with itself. Vincent was unaccustomed to asking for help, unaccustomed to admitting his own powerlessness before anyone, let alone a server in a small cafe on the outskirts of Denver. His eyes, though he tried to mask it, betrayed a turmoil, a blend of hope and fear of rejection, gratitude, and a wounded pride that had long been buried. Clara stood behind the counter, her brown hair loosely tied, a few strands falling across her face, her hands moving in a slow, steady rhythm as she wiped coffee stains from the wooden surface. She noticed Vincent the moment he entered, not because of his commanding presence, but because of the subtle tension in his stance, as if he were bracing for a battle he wasn't certain he could win. Vincent took a deep breath, his voice hoarse, carrying a rare sincerity he seldom revealed. He spoke directly, without preamble, saying he wanted her to spend time with Oliver, not as a formal job, but as a presence, a companion who could read stories, play games, or simply be there for the boy. He pulled a business card from his coat, sliding it across the counter, his fingers trembling slightly despite his efforts to conceal it. "I'll pay you well," he added, as if money were the only language he knew to express gratitude, though his voice carried a hint of awkwardness, as if he sensed this wasn't about money at all. Clara looked at the card, her eyes tracing the crisp, printed letters, but she didn't reach for it immediately. Her thoughts weren't on bank accounts or Vincent's generous offer. She was thinking of Oliver, of the moment he pressed his face into her shoulder, his frantic breathing slowing, as if he had found a safe haven for the first time in a world of chaos. She remembered the warmth of his small arms, the way he clung to her like a lifeline. Clara didn't respond right away. She gave a slight nod, her voice soft but firm, like a gentle breeze. "I'll think about it." Her words held no promise, yet they left room for hope, a quiet invitation for Vincent to keep believing. Vincent nodded, turning to leave, but paused, as if a sudden thought anchored him. He reached into his coat pocket, pulling out a small, crumpled piece of paper, carefully folded like a treasure. "This was on the back seat of the car," he said, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "I think it's for you." He handed the paper across the counter, and as Clara took it, she felt the faint tremble in his fingertips. She unfolded it carefully, revealing a crayon drawing. 2 stick figures side by side, a red scribbled heart between them, simple yet brimming with meaning. The drawing was imperfect, its lines wobbly, but it was enough to tighten her throat, a warm rush of emotion swelling in her chest. She looked up at Vincent, her gaze softer than ever, as if silently acknowledging the value of this gift. "Tell the boy I'll come visit," she said, her voice gentle as an unwritten promise. Vincent nodded again, and for the first time in years he felt a spark of hope pierce through the icy layers of his heart. He stepped out of the rusty spoon, the morning sunlight brushing his shoulders. But in his mind, he carried the image of Oliver's drawing, a small, vibrant red heart, like the first flame illuminating a dark corner of his soul. Clara, still behind the counter, folded the paper and tucked it into her pocket, as if holding on to a piece of Oliver, a piece of the hope she knew would guide her to the boy. Each week, Clara Monroe stepped into Vincent Caldwell's sprawling home, carrying an old canvas bag filled with picture books and crayons, simple items as unassuming as her own heart. She never called these visits work. To her, they were precious moments, tender pauses where Oliver, the 7-year-old boy with autism, could be himself without hiding or fearing. In a sunlit room bathed in soft golden light, Clara settled onto a plush rug beside Oliver, keeping just enough distance to make him feel safe. She didn't press him to speak or meet her gaze. Instead, she opened a picture book, her voice gentle as an autumn breeze, weaving tales of trembling rabbits afraid of the dark or lost ships finding their way to harbor. When she picked up a crayon, her drawings were clumsy, wobbly. A house with a crooked chimney, a cat with too many tails. But Oliver, whose pale blue eyes often shied away from the world, would light up just a little. Sometimes he quietly took a crayon, adding a floating cloud, a radiant sun, or a scribbled line without clear shape, but brimming with meaning, as if it were his way of speaking to her the things words could not convey. Vincent stood at a distance, leaning against the doorframe, his eyes quietly tracing every moment. He didn't want to interrupt, didn't want to shatter the fragile space Clara had crafted for his son. He noticed the subtle but profound changes in Oliver, how his shoulders gradually relaxed, no longer rigid with tension, how his hands, once clenched as if afraid to let go of something vital, now opened, gently touching the pages of a book or a crayon. His gaze, once evading everything, began to seek Clara, as if she were a lighthouse in the storm of his emotions. Each time Clara rose, folding the book and gathering her canvas bag to leave, Oliver would stand silently by the window, his small hands pressed against the glass, watching her car until it vanished behind the trees. Vincent felt his heart constrict, a sharp pang laced with admiration. He had built a real estate empire, negotiated deals that left others in awe, but he couldn't give his son the safety, the peace, that a stranger with a canvas bag and a gentle smile had so effortlessly provided. One afternoon, as the sunlight faded and dark clouds gathered over Denver's sky, Clara was telling a story about a baby bird learning to fly when a sudden clap of thunder tore through the silence. Oliver curled into himself, his small body trembling, his breathing quick and frantic, as if the world around him were collapsing. His hands clamped over his ears, eyes squeezed shut, as if to push away the storm outside and within his soul. Clara didn't panic. She stopped her story, slowly kneeling beside him, maintaining a distance that wouldn't frighten him. She opened her arms, palms upturned, a silent but warm invitation. Her voice, when it came, was soft as a whisper. "If you're scared, you can hug me." Oliver hesitated, his eyes flickering between fear and a fragile trust. Then, as if pulled by an invisible thread, he rushed into her arms, his small face burying itself in the softness of her sweater, his breathing slowing, as if she were the only shelter in the midst of the tempest. Vincent, standing quietly in the corner of the room, felt his eyes sting. His chest was heavy, but the jealousy he once felt when Clara achieved what he could not was gone. In its place, a deep gratitude welled up like a warm stream weaving through the cracks in his heart. He watched Clara hold Oliver, her hand gently rubbing his back, unhurried, undemanding. In that moment, Vincent understood that what Oliver needed wasn't expensive therapists or perfect plans, but a genuine presence, the kind Clara offered with all her simplicity and love. One morning, the pale sunlight filtered through the windows of the Rusty Spoon, as it always did, but the cafe's tranquil air was stirred by an invisible wave rippling across the internet. A blurry photograph, snapped from a distant corner, surfaced on online news sites, capturing the moment Oliver clung tightly to Clara, his small arms wrapped around her as if she were a sanctuary. The accompanying headline was merciless, sensational. Millionaire's son clings to Waitress. Secret or kindness? The sharp, judgmental words spread swiftly, from local blogs to tabloid pages, each share slicing into the fragility of that moment. Vincent Caldwell received a message from his assistant during a meeting, paired with a terse, heavy warning. "You should handle this." He opened his phone, his gaze locking onto the image. His son, Oliver, in his most vulnerable moment, exposed to the world. Blood rushed to his head, a blaze of anger mingling with a piercing ache. It felt as though someone had violated his most sacred treasure, turning his son's fragility into fodder for public chatter. His chest tightened, not just from the betrayal he imagined, but from the helpless realization that he couldn't shield Oliver from the world's prying eyes. At the Rusty Spoon, Clara Monroe stood behind the counter, her hands slowly wiping coffee stains from the wooden surface, but her mind was pulled to the headline she'd glimpsed on a customer's phone. Those words cut into her heart like a knife. She said nothing, her face betraying no emotion, but her hands trembled faintly as she folded the cloth. Her heart grew heavy, not from the baseless criticism of strangers, but because she knew what Vincent would think. She understood him too well. A man who lived in a world of control, where everything could be managed with money or power. She knew he would see the photo and assume betrayal, though all she had done was open her heart to Oliver. And she was right. That afternoon, during a break between shifts, a message arrived from her manager, cold and curt. Vincent had cut off all contact with her. No explanation, no chance to speak. Clara sat alone in the back room, the dim glow of a fluorescent bulb casting shadows over her hands. She unfolded the drawing Oliver had given her, gazing at the red scribbled heart between two simple stick figures. She didn't cry, but the pain settled in her chest like a cold, sharp stone. She had seen this before. People like Vincent, with their wealth, often chose safety over truth, building walls to protect themselves, even if it meant severing the most precious connections. In his polished office, Vincent tried to bury his emotions beneath numbers and contracts, but Oliver's image haunted him. The boy no longer stood by the sunlit window, waiting for Clara with hopeful eyes. The crayons, once his joy, lay untouched in their tin box, gathering a thin layer of dust. Late at night, as hallway lights spilled into Oliver's room, Vincent approached and saw his son curled up on the bed, clutching a pillow as if it could replace the warmth he'd lost. His small lips moved, whispering into the darkness, "She's not coming back." Those words struck Vincent like a blade, sharp and deep, slicing into his heart. He sat on the edge of the bed, not touching his son, just lingering in silence, but his presence felt insufficient. With a clarity more painful than ever, he realized he had destroyed the most precious thing in Oliver's life, the safety, the trust Clara had given him. And in the heavy silence of the room, Vincent felt a similar void in his own heart, as if he had not only severed his son's connection, but also his own to something deeper, something he had never known how to name. A week passed, and the air in Vincent Caldwell's sprawling home grew heavier than ever, as if Clara's absence had left an unfillable void. Then, on a gloomy morning, the truth quietly emerged through a report from his security team. The photograph, the image of Oliver clinging to Clara in his most vulnerable moment, was not taken by her or anyone at the Rusty Spoon. A random customer, a nameless passerby, had carelessly captured the moment on their phone and posted it online, thoughtless of the ripples it would cause. Vincent read each line of the report, every word striking his chest like a hammer. Guilt surged within him, powerful and uncontainable, like waves crashing against a rocky shore. He had been wrong. He had let fear of betrayal, fear of losing control, cloud the truth. In his mind, Clara's image surfaced, not as a waitress in a simple apron, but as someone who had given Oliver a priceless gift that money could not buy, a sense of safety, a sense of being accepted. He thought of her gentleness, the way she knelt beside Oliver, arms open without demand, and he realized he had shattered something precious because of his hasty judgments. Vincent sought Clara at a community library on a quiet morning, where soft light filtered through rows of old bookshelves, carrying the faint scent of paper and wood. Clara was there, seated on a small chair among a circle of children, her voice rising and falling, vibrant as a river flowing through the pages of a picture book. Her hands turned each page, painting stories of lost bears or stars falling to earth. Vincent stood at the entrance, silent, his eyes following her, not the book. In her, he saw the peace he had once witnessed on Oliver's face, a peace he had unwittingly stolen. As the children left, carrying their laughter and juice boxes, Vincent stepped forward, his hands clenched as if to hold on to the last traces of his courage. His voice trembled, no longer that of a powerful millionaire, but of a father, confronting his mistakes. He apologized, his words simple yet weighty, laced with a rare sincerity. He admitted he had let fear prevail, that no matter how wealthy he was, he couldn't teach Oliver how to trust or love, but Clara had. She looked at him, her gaze free of resentment, only quiet and knowing, as if she had always sensed this moment would come. She nodded gently, and in that silence, an invisible bridge was rebuilt, reconnecting two hearts once divided by doubt. From that point, Vincent and Clara together planted the seeds for something greater. They launched the Warm Embrace, a small but meaningful non-profit, where children with emotional challenges were guided toward authentic, judgment-free moments of connection. At the launch event, in a sun-drenched courtyard at the community center, soft blankets spread across the grass, gentle music filled the air, and families gathered with open hearts. Oliver stood beside Clara, his small hand lightly grasping the hem of her sweater as if she were his anchor in the crowd. Then, before the watching eyes, the boy turned to his father, his tiny arms reaching out, a silent invitation more powerful than any words. Vincent knelt down, his heart pounding, and embraced his son, feeling a warmth he had once thought was an unreachable dream. In that moment, he understood that the greatest things in life are not built with money or power, but with presence, patience, and unconditional love. This story reminds us that, no matter how rich we may be, only genuine connection can heal the deepest wounds. If you believe in the power of kindness, hit the like button, share this story, and subscribe to 30 Millionaire Stories. Every night at 10 p.m. on YouTube, we bring you stories that reignite faith in humanity. Thank you for staying until the end. See you in the next story.